You know, it's fitting that they call this the Jurassic Park franchise, because this franchise is complete ass. In the summer of 1993, one of the most influential summer blockbusters was set to release, a blockbuster movie known as Jurassic Park. With its unique and brand new use of visual effects, a gripping story with characters that are likable, people we can relate to, and as well as a mix of terror, thrillingness, and even the magic and wonderness of dinosaurs. This film has become a blockbuster hit on the Hollywood spectrum that deserves to be praised for all its glory, even still to this day. And it's so influential that they followed up with a bunch of shitty sequels after that. With every movie franchise, the goal always seems to remain the same: make more money than the previous installment. And with a handful of these franchises, not only do they make a profit, but they actually manage to be decent than the last film. Sometimes they may not surpass the original film, and there are times where they do surpass the original film. But for the most part, there are a lot of bad ones every now and then. And the Jurassic series is definitely one of the worst out of all of them. Normally there'd be a mystery in terms of these franchises, in terms of how bad these movies have gotten. With the Jurassic series, it's abundantly clear as to why these movies are terrible, aside from the first one. Mostly it's because of the fact of its really backward story in terms of what it stands for. Like, the whole point of the first movie, I am getting ahead of myself a little bit, but just bear with me. In the first movie, it started off with them making a theme park full of dinosaurs. It sounds like a pretty awesome idea, but it also sounds like a dangerous idea. But that's kind of what the movie was. It was showing a pretty awesome idea and how dangerous it could be if it's in the wrong hands. What the sequels seem to do is kind of go backwards on that mission statement, and mostly just to make a crap ton of money, and without any real understanding or reason as to why these movies exist. Because when it comes down to it, it has no reason to exist. The whole point of them, for these dinosaurs to coexist, is to, well, not exist. The only way to guarantee human survival of any kind is for them not to exist. You know, they always gotta force some sense into this nonsense. So therefore, we have a billion-dollar franchise that, for some reason, people keep buying into, and I'll never understand why. But I think the only way to really dive deep into this is to really talk about how the franchise has basically declined in quality, as well as logic, and even it's just as well as just destroying any purpose of what the first movie really stood for. So I guess we'll just start off with just talking about the first movie. So the first movie, of course, starts with a guy named John Hammond who just wanted to create a theme park based off of dinosaurs, because he has such a huge inspiration of seeing fake animatronics and, you know, what disguises as a real thing in terms of what you see in amusement parks. He wanted to make it actually there, to be present, to actually be real in front of the eyes of the human, which is a pretty big deal. And his idea was dinosaurs, which in of itself sounds pretty dangerous, but you gotta admit, seeing a dinosaur up close is pretty awesome, as long as it's caged up. But when it's not, you know, you got a whole movie on your hands, which is what this movie was. It was basically a guy who just wanted to put out a theme park for kids who just wanted to see something awesome. And they wanted Sadler and Grant to be the first ones to see it, seeing how they're archaeologists themselves, so they have enthusiasm for dinosaurs as well. But unfortunately, they were just there to tell him, this is a pretty bad idea, we shouldn't do this, people are gonna die, henceforth the rest of the movie. But in hindsight, while it's not 100% his fault, the idea of having this is, but while this is pretty dangerous, most of what happens throughout the film isn't entirely Hammond's or anyone else's fault. It's really Nedrin, the guy played by Wayne Knight, who basically stole a bunch of embryos, and in order to do that, he had to cut security and pretty much the entire power of the whole park in order to steal those embryos. But it was only meant to be temporary, and he was the only one who could turn them on, but he was killed by a bunch of dinosaurs, poisoned and burned by acid and all that, which is why it made them unable to turn on the power, and henceforth, again, the rest of the movie. And that's what kind of created the suspense in the situation. So while it wasn't entirely 100% their fault, they still agree with the fact that this was all a bad idea, and that it should stay a bad idea. But that's kind of what the fun of the movie was, just trying to see someone try to execute something that they shouldn't have done in the first place, in a sense trying to play God with a bunch of creatures that they don't know where they are, and they exist in human civilization, but all their mind is, I'm gonna eat you and you're gonna die, and I'm gonna assert my dominance. Or at least that's the mind of the T-Rex. Or I guess with any other dinosaur that's a predator. With that being said, why would you have predators in here? Anyway, that's kind of what the first movie was. Now, The Lost World is basically a bunch of people that are trying to save dinosaurs. Honestly, I don't see what the reason is. Like, they're extinct for a reason. They can't adapt to human society. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but apparently John Hammond and the rest of our main cast seem to think so. Again, seeing how they're predators there that want to kill you, I don't see what's meant to protect them. But I guess in the same way as like protecting a lion. You keep it in a cage, which we do in a zoo, which they tried to do with the T-Rex here in the last movie. Which, again, didn't work because, you know, it's in a fucking cage. This movie's already stupid. I haven't even finished talking about it yet. Anyway, they find a bunch of poachers who are trying to, you know, trap the dinosaurs into a box, which is already kind of weird. Why would you want to poach these things? And why would you want to save them? Why would you want to do anything with them? Even when it gets to the end of the film, even John Hammond explains the fact that they require their absence. They need to be isolated from human society. I'm like, no fucking shit, they need to be isolated from human society. They shouldn't have gone to the island in the first place. Like, have they not learned their lesson from the first movie? I mean, I know only Jeff Goldblum is the only returning actor in the film, but he can easily spread the word and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't go on this island full of dinosaurs because it would actually kill us as well as the rest of human civilization if it's let into the city, which actually happens in the movie. I'll admit, that scene was pretty awesome to watch. There was a lot of stupid endeavors that led to that point, and you have to dig through a lot of garbage just to get to that point, and you'd rather just fast forward through the whole thing just to get to that point. Watching the rest of this film isn't really worth your time. It wasn't worth mine when I did. And now we have the third installment of the Jurassic Park series that I honestly forgot even existed. To be honest, after looking back at it, I don't think it's really worth remembering, especially considering the logo doesn't even have the T-Rex on it. The reason for that is because this thing that's on the logo instead of the T-Rex actually kills the T-Rex in the movie. I don't know. I wasn't really feeling it. Whatever the hell this thing is, I don't even care what the hell it is. I honestly just wanted the T-Rex just to wreck shit, and we couldn't even get that. It said it gets wrecked by this thing. But that's aside from the problem with this film. The thing with this film is that it's just a rescue mission trying to save a boy who's stranded on the island. I guess he was on vacation or whatever, and then he got trapped. I guess it's just a basic film. It's not really like horrible or anything. It is rather boring. Ironically, this was the first Jurassic Park movie I ever watched as a kid. I didn't watch the first movie until like I was like maybe in my 20s. I'm 30 right now, but like, so that was like a long time ago. But at least it gave me an understanding as to what this franchise really stood for and what it really meant of the Jurassic Park series, or at least Jurassic Park in general. This film, looking back at it now, it's just kind of boring in comparison to the first movie, obviously. There's not really much to say about it, and it's kind of a pointless addition to the series. And now we get to the slightly least terrible Jurassic Park movie in the franchise, Jurassic World. Now this is the situation where Jurassic Park actually becomes a reality, but instead of being called Jurassic Park, it's called Jurassic World. And it actually has an open theme park filled with dinosaurs that are actually treated as like an amusement park / petting zoo. Well, not really petting zoo because, you know, there's still predators in this damn movie, so can't imagine what's gonna happen here. The movie itself is not as boring as a third Jurassic Park, but it's more like just the endeavors of what would happen if John Hammond's creation did become a reality and they actually had control of the dinosaurs, which in of itself could be a decent idea, but the way they execute it here is just kind of okay, I guess. There are some cool things in it, like we have a character who actually train dinosaurs like they're literal dogs, which is kind of cool, I guess. We have a giant raptor who can actually use camouflage around it just to hide itself from its prey. There is actually a cool fight at the end of the film between the T-Rex and the giant raptor, which actually it manages to be a pretty cool fight scene. I actually admit it was worth getting through all this garbage just to get to that point. Though it is the last 10 minutes of the film, and the film is nearly 2 hours longer than it needs to be. But like I said, you have to get through a lot of boring garbage just to get to that point. Like there are characters in the movie that you honestly do not give a shit about. Not like in the first movie where it's like you literally care about everyone's safety because you actually got to know them and you actually like their personalities, you like their conversations, you like their interests in terms of dinosaurs and whatnot, or their interests in terms of like what is happening around them. There's intrigue with these characters. But in Jurassic World, they're like appetizers for a dinosaur hometown buffet. It's not real. They're not really there to be characters. They're just there to be prey for our actual villains, which are the dinosaurs themselves. And of course, they add some lame villains in there too, like the main villain played by Vincent D'Onofrio, which kind of sucks because I think I don't feel it's not. Which kind of sucks because he doesn't really add much to the story or to anything really. He's just there to be eaten, and I would just rather him not be in the movie in the first place. I would just prefer them actually write a character for somebody instead of just whatever they did here. Overall, the movie itself isn't terrible. Like I said, those cool things that I mentioned before were pretty cool, I guess. It's not enough to say this movie is any good at all. But granted, it at least has some form of entertainment value, which is more than I can say for the next two we're going to talk about. So if you begin to think that the first two sequels of the Jurassic Park franchise were the absolute worst in the entirety of the franchise, you're absolutely wrong, because Fallen Kingdom is absolute dog shit. This is one of the worst Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, whatever movies in this franchise I've ever seen in this line of films. This is absolute, utter, ridiculous, horrendous, just an overall awful film. Again, just like in Lost World, they for some reason want to go onto the island to rescue dinosaurs, which includes the fucking predators, and for some reason they want to bring them to a mansion to preserve them on an auction and use them as weapons. Not the main characters, but any of the characters who want to do this is completely ridiculous and stupid. I don't even understand why this is the main plot. Are they just trying to find an excuse to make these films again? Do they not realize that they've literally, I wouldn't say they wrote themselves into a corner, but it's like they busted a hole through the corner and tried to dig their way through the drywall, expecting them to get out unscathed. They're gonna be covered in fucking slob by the time they're done, which is what this is. Then there's this character who's basically a clone of a girl who died, I guess. I don't know why they included her in the story, but basically, they use the same type of cloning DNA that they use for dinosaurs to clone her after she died, I guess. I don't know. When it comes to the end of the film, which is probably the stupidest thing that's ever happened, they're stuck. Basically, the dinosaurs are stuck in this big cage thing, and they have no way of escaping. And it's like a gas chamber, basically. And they're about to kill them all by releasing the gas and allowing them to die, even though they had the choice to let them free. But the better choice was to let them die so that they can secure the safety of humanity. But then this little bitch decides to press the red button, letting the dinosaurs free and roam out through human civilization. And what's their explanation for this?
I had to. They're alive. Like me.
Well, we should have left you in the gas chamber, and then you can die with them. Then you'll feel better about yourself. Or maybe not, because you'll be dead. But I don't care. You shouldn't have left them out, you fucking idiot. The bad ending is roughly not even the worst as to why this film is bad. But if you see it for yourself, but just you're probably going to shut it off within halfway through. Let's be honest. This film is just not worth your time. But somehow, it gets even worse. And now we've come to the absolute worst addition to this franchise, Jurassic World Dominion. So we left off with the dinosaurs being let out into human civilization, and some people dying left and right here and there. We all know who to blame for this. What makes this even more ridiculous is the fact that somehow this human civilization managed to survive around the dinosaurs, especially the predators. And I'm thinking, how, why, and for what? What would guide us to any survival or adaptability to coexist with these dinosaurs would ever be possible? There's no way it could be possible. Yes, I know there are herbivores that don't eat people, but the predators, they would dominate the entirety of that food chain, so it wouldn't even matter if those herbivores even exist anyway. I don't think the herbivores would even have regards to what's around them, because they would step on them anyway. There's no reason why there should be humans in this world at this point, let alone an evil corporation that wants to trap them, because we need more of those apparently. Which again, we can all blame the dumb bitch who let them out in the first place, which caused all this. And apparently she's the key to fixing everything. I personally would throw her into a T-Rex and watch her be chomped to death, which almost happens. I don't know why it won't happen. She doesn't deserve to live if this means she was gonna doom the rest of the world. They try to justify the actions of that character to make it seem like they have to exist in the human world. And it's just like, and it just makes it so ridiculous. It doesn't make sense to justify it. Like, we should have left them in the gas chamber so that everyone can survive. I know it wouldn't allow us to make another Jurassic World movie, but honestly, who gives a shit? We don't need to make another one. We didn't even need to make Jurassic World. We didn't even need to make Jurassic Park II. The whole point of these dinosaurs not existing is the fact that they can't exist in human reality because they can't adapt to human reality. They will eat you alive. This is their nature. You can't alter their nature. You just can't. And then no matter how many fucking times you do it, even from the screenwriter's standpoint, you can't expect them to adapt that way. And but the movie tries so hard to justify it, and it just makes it look even more ridiculous. And it's no wonder why I didn't watch this film when it came out, because I knew this was gonna be horseshit. And it was. It was indeed the worst Jurassic piece of the franchise. So yeah, these movies suck. I would include the newest Jurassic Park movie, but honestly, how much better or worse could it possibly get at this point? It to be honest, doesn't really need to continue anyways. Why would I even waste my time? This franchise needs to go. It doesn't need to exist anymore. I don't care how much money it makes. This franchise needs to die.